Okay, transmedia food fights. So I'm going to present a very detailed research study that I did with school children and their use of Twitter in the midst of food fights. Just kidding. Actually, my presentation is called Transmedia Food Fights. I'm going to talk about the use of transmedia in efforts, grassroots political efforts to change food regulations, food safety regulations in Manitoba. And I'm going to just kind of tell you, it's going to be a narrative kind of story, and I'm going to pull out some themes and some video and pictures and stuff, and it's not as argument-based as maybe some of the presentations have been, but I come from Canada, in Manitoba, which is right in the middle here. Anybody ever been to Manitoba? No. Okay, so Manitoba is very big. This is the UK, that's Manitoba. There's 1 million people in Manitoba. What is it, 53 here? 64, wow, it's grown since the last time I looked, I guess. So Manitoba is also very cold in the winter. This is a farm, neighbors of ours. This is a local food initiative, a co-op I work with, and this guy's playing music and his fingers froze. It was so cold, and so, you know.
Why do Canadians always wear shorts in winter? I've never understood that.
I don't know. I've never done it. That's not true, actually. And so here's a prize pack put together for this local food initiative. So it's interesting to think about the different challenges of winter and coldness in terms of making these things work. It changes the dynamics. But I'm going to tell you about, well, first off, so this is all kind of fits very well, I think, with a lot of what's being discussed today, and these ideas of food citizenship and civic food networks and how to engage in efforts to change regimes, for example. I'm going to talk about a political opportunity that arose to make change that I think fits well with what maybe some of the discussion earlier about how to make change and what I think part of it is there has to be a political opportunity open up if you're going to make change in food policy. And that's not one individual necessarily, but it's a very relational kind of thing. And this is a very good instance of that. So I'm going to tell you about this course that I'm involved in. I grew up right near this, on a farm nearby this community called Clearwater. There's 50 people in it, and I've been involved in a course for 7 years where we bring about 30 students out to live in this kind of recommissioned school to learn about living rural communities and environments. And so we do that every August, and every year something new and interesting comes up, and this was a very particularly interesting year. So here's some of the students picking their own vegetables to eat for the week, learning from a farmer about kind of grain production, commodity grain production in the prairies. Here's a campfire that we talk about. We enjoy the evenings with community members and kind of get to exchange in a very informal way. People learn how to can and cook and learn about food culture and rural food cultures. Here we are, some of the Chinese students in the course are teaching the community members and the rest of the community how to make dumplings. So there's this co-learning kind of approach that we have. It's very much as much a learner as I am an instructor in the course. So we also have this bus that I drive around. I won't be doing it this year because I'm here, and I don't know what the liability issues are around that. But anyways, I drive the students around in this bus to a bunch of different farms. And here we are on the bus, riding to a Hutterite colony. Does anybody know what a Hutterite colony is? They're kind of collective, originally from Germany, immigrants to Canada, and they have these collective kind of farms and living scenarios. And so here we are at this is kind of picture it, I say August 15th, it's blazing hot in rural Manitoba. We're enjoying this really interesting visit at the Hutterite colony, and we're about to go to the Cavers farm, Clint and Pam Cavers, Harborside Farm. Very good friends of mine. They've been involved in my own research very intensively, and really important in the work that I do, and important friends. About to go there, and then I get a phone call from their daughter, and it says, "Oh man, you can't come here. The food safety inspectors have just arrived, and they're raiding my parents' farm." They had a meat processing plant on their farm, and a small scale one, and they're raiding their plant, and you can't come here because this is just craziness. And so we were kind of like, okay, this is very weird, and I don't know what we're going to do with this. So we didn't go with the class to the group, but I called them and asked them if I could come by and see if there's anything I could do. And there were a couple students with me, and when we got there, this is kind of the scene that unfolded. This is one of the students, and they said they asked us to bring a video camera, and this is the scene that unfolded. One of the students just taking video of what was going on, me kind of very confused and worried about all the issues, very complex kind of situation. Sir? This is blazing hot summer. It's like not negative 35, but plus 35 Celsius. And so that's the inspector loading meat in and Clint kind of looking on. And so I'm going to show you okay, so what happened was we went there, we took this video, and we went back and showed some of the video clips to the class. And as part of this class, all the students they can do a final project. And so they can choose whatever strikes them as interesting. And it can be making a cookbook, it could be based on kind of traditional recipes, it could be helping to put a roof on a building because it's something that was really important to the community, and then reflect on it and so on, and all those kind of academic outcomes that you need for marking learning and all that kind of thing. But this crew of people decided to launch the real Manitoba Food Fight in response to this kind of event. And one of the things we did was make a video, and I'm going to show you the video, so it'll give you just kind of a good idea, a better idea of what happened, and then I'll talk a little bit about it. So.
We all want healthy food for our neighbors. We all want to promote as many farms as possible growing that food, and we want to inspire as many young people as possible to get into this growing industry. And that's how can we do this together so that we can all get what we want.
My daughter and I, we drove to Brandon for 2 hours just so we could be there and sample the products. And part of the reason we went is because we knew Clint and Pam would be there. We took great delight in sampling the different food products and trying out the prosciutto, which was fantastic. I was pleased that they had won the award, and then shocked, I guess is the word, to find that only a short while later the same products were being pulled as unfit for human consumption. And my daughter and I were sort of looking at each other going, we ate that. And we still seem fit in Hale and Hearties.
I was first attracted to buy meat from the Cavers because of the way they run their farm. I think they do everything right. They run their farm exactly the way a farm should be run to be sustainable and humane.
Health inspector showed up, served us this papers that said they were going to seize and destroy everything, and I kept them in the sun for over an hour and a half, debating basically that fact that I wasn't going to allow them to take it, and that they could go ahead and phone the RSMP.
This is not acceptable. If you guys want to stop photos, stop from now. You just get them to stay away while we're doing this. Because he's already snapping pictures. I need your name, please, sir. Sure. Okay. Just give him your name.
They have this order. They had the 2 tickets. Pam and I each got a $600, almost a $700 fine, each of us, for selling food that is, no person shall sell or display for purchase or serve any article of food that is unfit for human consumption.
Has your food ever gotten anybody sick?
Never.
This money was supposed to go towards process. So, okay, so now how do we make the health inspectors happy by making sure that we're doing everything that we can for our public health in Manitoba?
They're saying, well, there's a guideline, a CFIA guideline, but there's really nothing. It's a guideline. It's not a hard and fast rule that says, okay, you have to meet this criteria.
So one arm gave us the money, and the other was seizing it.
My sense as a complete outsider and not knowing the details is that it seems to be a bit of miscommunication and a bit of not necessarily having, or the province, not necessarily having the right tools and the right technology and understanding and regulations to handle small-scale farmers.
I think that they are not in touch with changing food trends. and I think that they're having a hard time adjusting to this desire for smaller producers, local producers. Our province should be encouraging, supporting, and helping develop these small farm-based businesses. It is the best way for the farm economy and the family farm to survive in our province. Moving away from, on-the-farm processing leads us to have fewer options, more homogeneous options. It's the big companies that will survive in this climate.
Well, that's what he said, you gotta comply to these big companies' rules and regulations. He said, why would I do that? I would never do that. I'm not a big company or a big facility. I have no intention of ever being.
There has to be more honest and open discussion with the authorities, because we all want safe food for our neighbors.
I've spoken to many people about how wonderful everything we've received from the farm, from Harborside has been, and we'll continue to support them 150%.
Well, Cavers have a lot of friends, they have a lot of customers, they have a lot of people that have eaten their product, including the Minister of Agriculture, who has really appreciated what they grow. I think all of those people, including the Minister, should be coming to their defense right now.
So I don't know, we'll see. I mean, people could be just waiting, especially in the food world, on the end of receiving what we're doing. They could be just waiting for a reason to like have something to fight for.
Right. So that was the start of a process that I'm just going to unfold for you a little bit right now. I want to talk about a transmedia approach to making change. This is telling stories and trying to make change by using multiple medias and telling those stories across different media types, which I think can be a really effective way to make change. So, okay, there's the video that you saw, which we'll talk about in a second. We made a Facebook page, kind of immediately got about 500 or 600 followers that were really interested, and they were. We also were very active in the mainstream media and alternative media, writing op-eds in the paper and letters to the editor, and really having this kind of mainstream approach to getting the word out there and communicating our messages. The video was on the web, also on YouTube, but we also screened it at the Harvest Moon Festival, which is very connected to this group. We had it in front of a screen of 1,000 people at 9 o'clock at night, watching this and kind of creating, again, a very transmedia kind of approach, bringing different medias together in-person interactions, and then people are talking about it in the crowd, and we're handing out brochures and these types of things. We also created these participatory forums here where we didn't have a lot of them, maybe 3 or 4 of them, where we were bringing farmers and consumers together to talk about the issues. And so those were also very important for our mobilization efforts. The design itself, this was all really cool. This website that we created, the video was a little bit longer, but it basically happened in 3 days and nights on the course. Just people banging out, build a website, make a Facebook page, create a campaign. It's amazing what digital media and technology can possibly do when you bring people together with different skills. We had a really skilled designer in our group, and we wanted to parody the Manitoba government. Was one thing we decided, because this whole idea that they, with one hand they take it and the other hand they give it away. And so we wanted to also tell our story through design. And so we created, instead of the Great Manitoba Food Fight, which is the award that they gave the cavers before they took their meat away, we called it the Real Manitoba Food Fight. We created a kind of a brand of our own that matched theirs and parodied theirs, and the same with the logo, the fist with the pig in it, right? And the bison up at the top kind of matches theirs, and so that was an intentional approach. We also had meetings with government, so we're also in-person meetings with government, a transmedia communication approach. And this injected discussions into the legislature. This was, I think, talked about 3 times in the legislature. That's what he said this morning, right? At that point, it becomes a national issue. What do you say? Once it's a local, well, once it doesn't matter, twice it's local, and 3 times it's national. So we were pretty effective in that regard. We had an online petition, which I question the efficacy of. And then also, like, it was really neat to see the existing networks in the alternative food community being mobilized politically in this case when an opportunity arose. And so you would think, you know, lots of people criticize it, a lot of kind of say that these movements are apolitical and need to become more politicized. Well, I think there's lots of opportunity for that, but the political moment has to be right. This was a good case of that. So what outcomes from this that we know of now? And this is an ongoing process. We're still pushing forward. So certainly an increased public profile of the issues. That story, with one hand you take it, the other you give it away, gave us a huge kind of like story to tell and to draw people into this. And there was so much interest in food safety regulations. How do you get people interested in food safety regulations if it's not around like somebody dying? You know, this is a much different kind of approach, right? There's a coalition formed of all the farmers, chefs, and consumer groups together that are going to be working with government called Farmers and Eaters Sharing the Table. The Cavers charges ended up being dropped, and so that was really positive, but they didn't offer any explanation of what evidence they had against them or why they destroyed the meat without letting them test it. So there might be a legal challenge to that coming up. We've had meetings with the government, lots of them, and it's kind of moving forward. They've created a task force that we sit on amongst other groups. And we learned a lot and created a strategy to make change in the province around food safety regulations in particular. We know that there is consolidation and coming together in the community, but there's also fragmentation that we're trying to make sense of, say, between farmers and indigenous hunters and fishers, which are kind of separate, and we need to figure out how those things fit together. So sense of frustration, but also kind of a sense of hope with all of it, and doubt, but also hope. So 3 cheers for transmedia. Hip hip hooray. Yeah? Hip hip hooray. Okay, great. But maybe we need to think about it a little bit more. And there's been a few kind of odds and ends that have come up that maybe challenge it a little bit. I think the transmedia approach of the digital tech has been really useful for internal coordination and also for external and in between those things. But there's also been some challenges. So Clint here, I'm just going to give some quotes and let you think about them. We can discuss them later. Clint says, "The inspectors are more savvy, and as farmers reach out to try to promote what we are doing, we're at the same time allowing the government into our farm before they set foot here." Inspectors after this went out and looked at all the websites of direct farm marketers and people that were being promoted in people's blogs and things like that, and started visiting their farms. And so, you know, surveillance, all of the kind of things that we were talking about, very interesting stuff, right? This is in regards to the co-op that I'm involved in, but it's related. So Arvid Dalzal is a farmer. He says, "The decisions on these proposals should not be made by email. Some of us do not check emails regularly, and then 3 to 4 producers pass something that the rest of us have no knowledge about. Internal democracy, when there's differences in competencies and interest in digital technology, creates problems." Okay, so one thing that's come up, this is me. This could be me and on Skype with people and emailing, and really kind of disconnected personally from the kind of our efforts and our organizing efforts. This e-silence is coming up way too much as a deflating force. People will email out a really good idea or what they think is a really good idea. Nobody emails back. In person, it would have been somehow worked out, but then people just kind of like say, "I'm done with it." And we've had to be really careful about kind of making sure that doesn't happen. And so then David, this farmer that's involved, says, "I do need to admit some insecurities in pushing forward when we don't know if we're being appreciated. I'm happy to step away, but we'll keep on for a while longer with kind words in our ears." So we've intentionally said, okay, this e-silence that's happening, people not responding, is like killing us. And so we've made an intentional effort to make sure that everybody kind of gets responded to. And so it was just something that struck me as really interesting. So something that's really I also I'm just pulling out ideas now, but the role of digital media and academia and the relationship between community, social movements, and academia. Clearly this is blurring the lines of being a scholar, academic, community organizer, activist, and I think there's stuff to unpack around that, but also lots of opportunity. Opening and revealing hidden spaces with video and the internet. You see it with videos inside of industrial hog barns all the time, but also with this. If an inspector comes up and is being oppressive, people have video cameras now, and it creates an opportunity that out in these rural hinterlands where potentially, you look how big Manitoba is, it's a long ways away from a lot of people where the cavers are. But now there's an opportunity to make that space visible to the public or those interactions in a really interesting way. And it also, again, overcoming this tyranny of distance. both in terms of coordinating alternative food networks and helping to coordinate communication amongst really geographically dispersed people, like me in England now, and still working with the Manitoba Food Fight. It's been really interesting how that's enabled, the digital media has enabled that. So I think digital media can support vibrant civil society organizing and civic food networks and food democracy, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's useful, videos have been very useful for mass communication, so more of a, not a multi-way communication necessarily for stimulating that, but for communicating with the public. And that internal coordination and networking, which I've talked mostly a lot about here, it's been really useful in that way, but also problematic. And so just to end, and building on, this actually might fit really nice with your platform, is we've created, so I want to explore this further, this idea of community practice with the group here and with you and whomever is interested. And so we've created this kind of, again, using very rudimentary kind of technology, WordPress, we created this website called Digital Tech for Resilience. And it's really just a stub. I'm calling it an emerging digital space to discuss, demonstrate, and promote the role of digital technology in creating just and resilient food systems. And so right now, there's really not much there. It's this is all literally up for, I don't want to own this. I want it to be a space that we can all share stories if anybody's interested. I have no idea, right? These are kind of experiments, but right now there's a number of different kind of case studies, very short pieces about the Manitoba Food Fight. Raf talked about potentially doing one about the open source stuff he's working on, or whomever might want to put a blob in there. And then just try to get a better, I also had created a very similar word cloud to Xiaomi, based on our work that we're doing with our digital media group at Coventry, and just trying to make better sense of all the different potential benefits and risks of digital media and trying to just make sense of all of those things. So I think we're going to talk a little bit afterwards, and whomever might be interested, maybe over lunch, to talk about this. We're also planning to, and we also have to talk about this because we are planning on putting together a special issue, a journal issue about this topic. And my vision is that that it would be inclusive of lots of different forms of representation. So someone that wanted to write stories, there might be space for video in this kind of publication, whatever it might be. And so if anybody's interested, there's been so much insightful bits and pieces, and people are working on stuff. I think that might be a good opportunity to learn together and to get some of it out into the broader world. So with that, that's the my personal whatever website and my email address, and thanks.